mine is. Hey guys, it is Tuesday night. I am coming to you live from the KICKER National Headquarters right here in Stillwater, Oklahoma from the UnMasked studios. I'm going to be your host tonight, John Myers. If you haven't seen us before, we spend about the next hour and a half talking about some cool things having to do with car audio. And yes, we always give away some stuff. We'll talk about that in just a minute. If you guys missed last week's show, I was kind of disappointed I wasn't on that one. We unveiled all the new marine products, the high-end marine products we've been developing for years, and I am really, really excited to see what you guys think about it. Be a lot of good coaxial components, subwoofers, LEDs, LED controllers, accessories, you name it. But our marine line was big enough, we thought, but it's going to get a lot bigger, and it's going to get a lot better. So some really cool stuff coming up. But we did have a great show 2 weeks ago. We got a great show tonight. I've got kind of the usual crew with me. I got Steven back behind the camera back here. Of course, we got Ernie in the back, hiding back there with Colin. The only one we're shy of tonight is JW, who's doing some stuff with his daughter. So that is awesome. Hope you guys have a great evening and leaving us high and dry. If you guys are wondering why we're delayed tonight, Google CoffeeGate/Ernie. That's all I'm going to say on that. We're going to leave it at that. It was him. So we've got a great show. We've got Wayne Harris coming up. You guys probably know the name. If you don't, you're going to know it after this show because you talk about a really, really neat person and someone's been connected with car audio since the very early days. But we're going to take a quick break. We'll come right back and we'll be set up, ready to go and address a few other little issues and then bring out Wayne. So see you in a few minutes or less.
It's been a long road since the original KICKER christened that first pickup truck. It kicked off a car audio renaissance, and upgrading your music in a vehicle was a requirement. America's music machine became living loud over your passion, your emotion, your existence. Outdoors or on the open road, your sound is KICKER.
Music is my passion, my livelihood, and it's in my DNA. My pals at KICKER Marine Audio gave me a chance to take the music, what I love and listen to, at home, on stage, and in the car, onto the water. Hi, this is Jason Bonham, and I want to say a big thank you to my friends at KICKER Audio for inspiring the songs and the stories behind the music that inspires America. Go overboard! This is your time.
Hey guys, welcome back. We're about ready to get the show started. If you guys haven't guessed, we did have Roadhouse again. So thank you again, Texas Roadhouse. That filet is really good, even if it's been prepared a few minutes before and it takes a while to get here. But as always, Steven runs and grabs his dinner before every show, and it's kind of nice to sit around with the guys and have a good meal before we get started. Actually, it's bribery to keep us doing this more than anything. But if you guys like what you see tonight, if you're new to the show, hit the like and subscribe button. If you guys have suggestions for topics, guests, anything you want to see on the show, we are always open to suggestions. We've been doing this almost 150 shows now, isn't it, Steven? You remember how many? He's got like a deer in the headlights look. I'm sure it's somewhere close to 150 shows. So, like I say, if you guys like what you're seeing, let's keep this thing going. We don't get paid for doing this, but we want to make sure we keep you guys entertained. So any subjects you have, got questions on, please bring them up. And also, if you do have technical questions and it's not during the show tonight, or if it's after hours and can't get through on the phone, always remember we got 4 great guys up in the customer service area that answer questions at support@kicker.com. Yes, it's just that easy to get your questions answered, and they almost always have responded by the next business day. So that's awesome. If you guys have not become members of the KICKER Club, make sure you do that. I think we're approaching 63,000 or more people. That is awesome. It really is kind of an honor to work for a company that's got that kind of following. And of course, talking to following. We got all you guys out there. I noticed, Bobby, you were signed on. I think it was first again. I don't know how you always do that, but that is awesome. Apparently, you're really bored on Tuesday nights. But, the rest of you guys, like I say, we couldn't do the show without you guys. Thanks for tuning in. I do want to give a shout out to a couple of my good buddies from the show and from this industry, Mike Craner and Ashley Larry. Both these guys have been through, they keep getting hit and knocked down, but they keep getting back up. So they're going through some issues right now that hopefully they'll get those all taken care of and be back full strength real soon. But thanks again for tuning in, and give your thoughts and your prayers to those guys. I'm sure they won't mind at all. So guys, thanks again for doing that. Don't forget, after this, we got Living Loud with Andy. That'll be a lot of fun. He's going to continue some of the topics we talk about and probably slip into a few others. And then, of course, as always, we've got a big giveaway going on tonight. We've got the $2,500 giveaway going on. So you have till 8:30 Central Time. That's about 51 minutes from now to get your registration in for that $2,500 contest. And I'm going to help you pick out $2,500 worth of gear specifically to whatever system you want to do. So thanks for doing that. And of course, we always give stuff away. So Ernie, if you want to go ahead and pull up my laptop, they can see what they're going to win in case I can't read it straight, which has not been the first time that happened. But if you guys register tonight also for the weekly giveaway, third prize winner is going to get the EB400s, which are the wireless Bluetooth earbuds that, well, they do have a wire that goes between left and right, but they are water resistant. Those things are awesome. You'll get those, a koozie and an Unmasked t-shirt. The second place is going to get the TWS2s, which are true wireless in-ear earbuds. I've got a set of those and I absolutely love them, especially in airplanes. And if you happen to be the semi-grand prize, it's only the semi-grand prize because of the big winner that's going to win $2,500 tonight. The grand prize of the bi-weekly giveaway is going to get a BF100. That's a Bluetooth speaker that's fully waterproof. You're also going to get the koozie and the t-shirt. So, as always, thanks for tuning in. If you guys have questions, pop them up on the board. Reach out. Colin's going to throw them up on screen as they come through. And I think that's really about all we've got to get into, other than to introduce my wonderful guest who I've known for many years and is truly an icon of this industry and someone who has helped develop this industry literally from pretty much day one in the ground up. Welcome, Wayne Harris.
Hey, glad to be here.
Well, we're sure happy to have you, and I don't think we could ever have you on the show too much as far as we're concerned, but the knowledge you have and the things you've done over the years, it's just, you really have set this industry on its ear, and you've done some really incredible things, both personally and for the industry, and it keeps going. But, we got to go back to the beginning, way back in the beginning, because I always got to know, how did you unfortunately get hooked up in car audio, and how did you not get away from it?
Well, I can tell you why I didn't get away from it, because it's kind of like that song Hotel California. You can check in, but you can't check out. And
I agree.
I mean, just like you were mentioning, I love car audio. I love music, actually, and I like the experience that music gives me. We have all the best attributes of anything that I feel, would be a great hobby. So we've got technology, we've got cars, we've got music. And, in this industry, as you know, it's started out as a small community of people, and it grew into a huge family of people that share a common interest and a common passion. I actually got involved when I got all involved in audio. I mean, dude, you're asking questions that are going to date me, and that is a problem.
Hey, the only reason I do that is because I think you've actually been in it longer than I have, so it makes me feel young. So I'm being selfish here.
Just like a lot of people, I started off, I was interested in home stereo equipment back in the early 70s. And in the town I grew up, we didn't have anything to do. I mean, literally, we had one flashing yellow light in town. And so I have a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, as you probably have guessed. I got my mom, when I was 16, she co-signed a banknote for a Sansui 9090, which at the time was $750. In today's money, that'd be like $5,000.
Yeah.
And then I started doing dances after the high school football game. So I was acting as a DJ. I'd split the money with the band, and I'd reinvest that money, and I bought more and more. Long story short, I've always been interested in technology, and I've found a way of turning my hobbies into business. I remember one time I was driving with my brother, and this is back in the 6x9 era. And I think as that song Lunatic Fringe came on, and he had those Sherwin-Vega 6x9s. I can't remember what they were. They had the little reset button, for the tweeter.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I was like, man, this is incredible. And so I started taking off-the-shelf technology, primarily home audio equipment, modifying it to work in my car. And I kludged together something that really became pretty potent back in like 1984. So that's, in that era, I was in college. I didn't have any money. I didn't have a nice car. There's really no way to stand out. So I just took what I had, which was my knowledge of electronics and my love of music and technology. And I integrated those into something that I felt would attract attention, primarily attention from the opposite sex.
We're all salesmen. I think Ernie says that best. We're
and
selling
the
yourself.
thing was, I didn't, at that time, 1984, there was a really amazing cruising area in Arlington, Texas called Cooper Street. And I mean, it's kind of insane, but if you imagine like 2 or 3 miles of bumper to bumper stop and go traffic, 4 or 5 lanes long, and it's just kids having a good time. And in those days, people socialized physically, personally. And so we'd be cruising and I could pull my car into a parking lot, open the doors, and it'd be a rock concert. And before you know it, people would come from all over. So that's kind of what got me into it. As far as getting into the industry, that kind of was an accident. I heard that there was a car stereo contest called Rolling Thunder, and George Reed, actually, I have to give him kudos. He is the person that really lured me into the car audio industry. So I heard about that contest, and I couldn't believe that such a thing existed. And I went to that event. I didn't win, but I think I came in second place, but it got me hooked. And from that moment on, I spent all of my money on car audio. So I had like a $20 food budget, ramen noodles. I spent $20 a month on food and all the rest of my money on stereo equipment.
And gas.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't want to just monologue for you the whole night, but
well, that's why we brought you on.
Well, I was really fortunate. I was in the right place at the right time. Back in those days, you couldn't buy like a 10-inch subwoofer. You couldn't buy a 1,000-watt amplifier. You couldn't go out and get bus bars and interconnect. Everything you did had to be fabricated or modified from something else. I built a car, and I ended up going to the first national championship at the Astrodome in 1984, and I won that event. And that was the inflection point in my life that kind of put me on course to being involved with this industry. So not much time passed after that, and the store where I was purchasing my equipment, every time I go into the store, the owner would say, "So what's it going to take for you to go to work for us?" And I was in college doing electrical engineering. So I was a senior. And one day he asked me, and I said, you buy me a new Corvette and I'll start tomorrow. And he leaned back in his chair and he stood up and he shook my hand. And we went down and bought a brand new fire engine red Corvette. And I dropped out of school and started working for them. Actually,
I wish that was still the case today.
I didn't do anything, really. They just wanted me to use me for marketing and promotional. My job was to put my car in front of the store and demo. That's really what they wanted.
Well, they knew talent when they saw it, and like I say, and it's shown. So,
well, thanks.
Hey, do you remember what the first system was that you competed with? What gear was in it?
Well, it was a hodgepodge of equipment. I had some home stereo equipment. I had, actually, believe it or not, this is in 1984. I had a bank of 63 23,000 microfarad electrolytic capacitors wired in parallel. And that's where, at that finals, that's where I met David Navone and actually David. And then they went ahead and took that idea, that concept, and came out with the stiffening capacitors.
Yep.
But
and their Buick.
I had, and I had some, I had a Rockford Fosgate bipolar 650, and they only made like 50 of those things. And I think it cost like $1,600, and it was supposedly 650 watts. That's like the ILS rating. If lightning strikes, it would do 650 watts. And I literally had to carry around a bag of parts because I could be playing my system and all of a sudden it starts sounding distorted. And what was happening is all of the emitter resistors would get so hot they would desolder and fall out of the board. And so I'd have to take the amp apart, solder the resistors back in place, and then I was good for another hour or so of music. So, I mean, it was, there's some pictures of this. By the way, I have a lot of really old school videos, and it's on, if you just go to dbtv.com, website dbtv.com, it'll link to my YouTube channel. But there's a lot of videos that go all the way back to the 80s, even sound off events that George Reed was doing that I've uploaded to that. So, at the time I thought it was the most incredible thing ever, but looking back, I have to shake my head at, it's pretty compared to the stuff I see today and the stuff that was in your commercials, those installs and everything. I mean, it was really primitive.
Well, it's been a lot of fun growing with this industry over the years, and it's really cool. You've got some of those old videos out there. People go see what it was like, for a lot of these guys, probably even before they were born. So,
Yeah, you're really dating me.
Well, me too. I mean, it's funny when I go out and do trainings and there's people literally almost a third of my age in the trainings. It's just cool that, you can stick with something this long that you love doing and you don't feel out of place. I mean, and I never quit learning every day, just like you talking about, going back and getting your second master's. You never know it all, and it's always fun to learn and broaden your horizons. So
I was just really, really fortunate to be in the right place at the right time. After Stereo Dallas, I really wanted to work for Rockford Fosgate, but Orion Industries, which was another U.S. manufacturer back in the day, they offered me a job as an engineering assistant, and I was able to bump elbows with some of the brightest people. And in fact, in the very infancy of car audio competition, back before IASCA, we had NACA and some other orgs, and I met Lloyd Ivey, and so the list is long, but these people, I learned from them, and that is something that I think makes me just really fortunate, is I was able to work with the brightest minds at the right time. Some of them were not the most educated, but they were entrepreneurial. They saw a need for a specific type of product or a problem in this industry, and they would come up with the solutions. And I got to be a part of that. So, I was just really lucky. And then I finally got to work at Rockford. My good friend, Ron Trout, every time he'd see me at these meetings, he'd be going, when are you going to go to work for a real car audio company? Because I was working at Orion.
I can hear him saying that.
Yeah, and so after a couple of years of badgering, they offered me a job over there, and then I was there for a long time. So, good times.
So, and we're getting back to the whole competition thing. It's kind of what we're talking about tonight, is the competitions, how they've changed, and what the differences are between back then and today. And you're founder of a little series of competitions. Why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about what you're doing?
So one of our businesses is DB Drag Racing. We do car stereo contests. I don't know the exact number of countries. We're in like 42 countries, and we've done almost 25,000 events since 1994. So DB Drag Racing is really, it started out just as a base competition, and it's modeled after drag racing. And some of the original ideas come from other people. I was part of it, so it was again, it's one of these things where people were just sitting around in a bar or whatever, shooting off ideas and trying this stuff. So, I don't want to take all the credit for it, but I took it and made something out of it. And what I had noticed is at the car stereo contest, And I have no problem with sound quality. I love sound quality. I mean, I make a living making musical things. But sometimes the SQ competitions were not really exciting to watch. You could literally, it's like watching paint dry. So we tried to think of ways to make it exciting. And, bass is top fuel dragster. So we have brackets, competitors qualify, and then we take the loudest competitors and they come back and they go through a head-to-head elimination competition. And we've been doing that a long time. But over the years, we've also expanded the format. So now we have 6 or 7 different types of formats that, just like a food court in a mall, it caters to different tastes. We have different formats that cater to different interests, and they require different skills and different installs. But primarily, most of the guys in car audio competition, they want to see who has the loudest car stereo system, And in the old days, it was music, but when it morphed, the DB drag racing portion anyway, morphed into mostly just bass notes, test tones. Very incredibly loud. Hard to imagine how much energy is produced. But it's just what we call a burp tone, just a and anyway.
Or you had the CDs like Beethoven or Bust or Bach Busters, with all the synthesized low notes. And that was some of the demo music from, back in the late 80s and 90s that, it's weird. And you start talking about competitions, Didn't we used to use music in competitions? We no longer do that. We've kind of evolved and gone away from music somewhat.
Well, in the beginning, like when we were first competing, we'd use flash dance primarily. It had a series of tones, bum, 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 bum. And usually one of those tones would be most effective in your vehicle. And so, although it was a song, the tones were you could think of it as the very first type of burp tone. So, it was a sustained bass note, and it was usually at one of those frequencies would really resonate in the vehicle and create high sound pressure level. So, that's what we do. It's the problem with music. If the music is too transient, then it's like a hammer blow. The sound is intense, but the duration is so short that it doesn't cause the meter to really effectively produce a high number.
Yeah, and I do remember, there's always the different meters back in the day. You had the audio control and you had the BNK, and it's just interesting how the whole competition thing has really sprouted all these different fingers and different types of competitions, and it's really been kind of fun watching all this go on. And I know for a few years we didn't follow the competition scene quite as close as we did early on in my career here, but we're getting back into it. And I've been to a couple SPL events like Slamology, and then of course there was the big surf show we went to just about a month and a half ago. But it's fun seeing the creativity of some of these guys. But for those people that are watching, that what would you expect to see in a competition in about 1988 to 1990? Give it just an overview of what their system might be like and what they were playing and how they were judged, because it's changed quite a bit.
Well, back in those days, of course, you would see a sub enclosure. A lot of the speakers in the beginning. And I think we'll probably be talking about driver sensitivity and things like that later in the program. But
yes,
you could expect to see like polypropylene subwoofers. So they had like that plastic clear look to them. A lot of in Texas anyway, pickups had kicker boxes. You guys actually developed the kicker box, and then a lot of custom installs made boxes that look like that were designed, for the subs. So you could see 2 or 4 subs. There'd be speakers in the kick panel, just a lot of the things that you would see today. I think in those days, the competition vehicles were a lot more musical. So the vehicles were daily drivers. You didn't really, before DB drag racing, and before, other than like the Terminator and a couple of other vehicles, most cars were daily drivers. So people would build up, they'd put in systems that they could listen to at high levels, and then they would use that very same vehicle for competition. Only later as like the sound off events became really, really serious, did we start seeing the purpose-built competition vehicles, that are made just for competition. They're not really driven. So a lot less power. Power was expensive. In fact, not many people made big amps. I remember, Rockford Fosgate came out with that Power 1000, which is a 4-channel, 250 watts RMS per channel ILS. So you could bridge it, but only into like a 4-ohm load. But that was a Class AB amp. So it was a good sounding amplifier. In those days, we were still focused on the quality of the sound, not making inverters to drive speakers. I mean, some of the stuff that's out there today, I mean, I don't know how you can even call it an audio amplifier. That's just my personal take on it. But, those amps, I think the Power 1000 was like $2,600, and, and it wasn't super efficient, 50, 60% efficient. So you had to have a big electrical system. This is before high output alternators. So sometimes people with these big systems, they would have multiple batteries. They would, like in my case, I used like a alternator that was made for an ambulance, emergency vehicle. A lot of handmade peripherals. So, the bus bars, the wiring, you couldn't go online and there wasn't online. So let's be real.
No.
You had to fabricate.
Exactly.
So there was a lot of craftsmanship, and I saw some beautiful installs. I remember at the 1984 finals, there was a Zapco van that came in from California. And man, I thought that install was just amazing, So, even though it was a long time ago and you couldn't buy things over the shelf, there was still a lot of creativity and a lot of innovation. Some of the products that were developed actually became commercialized later on, like the stiffening cap thing and the bus bar thing. I was using bus bars in the Regal in 1984. And that was something that I had seen when I was working on two-way radios at one of my jobs. The power systems and backup power supplies use those bus bars. So, yeah, it was interesting. And, even at some of those IASCA finals, the installs were beautiful. Just really motorized amp racks and stuff. I mean, it was amazing for the time.
Yeah, and of course we had Fishman with the fish tanks and everything.
Yeah.
Good old Dave. Right. So yeah, it was very interesting, and I think some of that, the whole, social media thing with, Instagram and YouTube and TikTok and Facebook. I think some of that high-end installs coming back, which is really cool to see, but I'm jealous because, of course, they get to use the computer-controlled CNC mills and lasers and engravers that I missed out on. So I'm a little jealous about that, but it's still fun to look at all these cool installs, and it's just, there's no limit, you guys out there, just, you're only limited to your mind, and what you can afford to finance.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the tools, like you're talking about, the tools that people have access to today allow installers to do things that are so far away and beyond anything that was possible back in the 80s. I mean, just spectacular, beautiful. And, I go to all these Knowledge Fest and Master Tech and some of these other, Mark Eldridge and, does great seminars, and they actually demonstrate how to use those tools or how to set up equipment. Even companies now make test equipment that allow you to do things, even the signal processing. In fact, and we've come to a point now where in the old days, I don't want to say old days, preliminary days.
There you go.
So you had to really focus on speaker placement and crossover points, and you had to really put forth some engineering effort up front. Now, I sometimes feel that people just build it and then they push the button and let the DSP processor, try to unravel everything. But there's some downside to that, when you start doing that, I think our ears are really sensitive to phase changes, more sensitive even than frequency response. And so when you start creating spaghetti bowls of signal processing, you can actually create a system that doesn't sound musical.
Yeah, and your ears will know it, because I always tell people, especially with real instruments, when I'm tuning systems, I'll use something that I know is real instruments, not some kid in a laptop, and a tone generator, which obviously we didn't have back in the 80s, for the test tones like they're doing now. That's why we had to use songs like Flashdance and the Beethoven or Bust, because they had those low continuous notes that they were impressive on the right system. And
yeah, do you remember? Sorry, go ahead. You made me think of something.
Well, you made me lose my train of thought. I just got derailed. So go with yours, and I'll see if I can remember it.
Well, do you remember that demonstration CD that had like the jet aircraft that flew in right over the top of you? And I don't know if you remember that, and we used that for demo. It sounded so real. And this was right in 1984, I believe, is when Sony came out with the first CD player for a car, the CDX5. If you even looked at it wrong, it would skip.
Yeah.
But some of the companies started coming out with the demonstration CDs because they wanted to show off the capabilities of, a compact disc has the really great frequency response and really good dynamic range. And so those CDs, especially like Telarc and some of the other companies, I don't even know if those companies are still in business. But
I don't think Telarc is anymore, because I think I've looked them up before, trying to find some of the old, like the Great Fantasy Adventure album and the Spy CD. There was just some really good stuff out there that was recorded decent. And
well, if you go back, I got in a habit of listening to like satellite radio all the time, satellite music, like XM, for instance, and you can then put in a CD and it'll just blow your socks off. The difference is amazing, astounding. So I got out my test equipment and I started looking at it, and there's like a brick wall at 15K. They don't use those high frequencies because it requires additional bandwidth. So I mean, we have a whole couple of generations of people that probably haven't heard music the way it really could be heard, because everything we hear is compressed. It's MP3. It's over
Bluetooth.
It's just not the same.
Yeah, in fact, that's one of my trivia questions I like to ask is, how many people do you think have never heard uncompressed music? And it's probably in the mid to high 90s. There's very few people that, have really heard music the way it's supposed to be heard, like in a proper live performance and, a good concert hall. But, we do the best we can with car audio, and we have fun doing it, and we teach people about it and keep going. But what I did remember, what I was starting to talk about before, talking about, DSPs and all that, and, the craftsmanship you had to have building these vehicles without all the machine tools and with all the technology in the DSP. Some of the things we did on Mark Eldridge's 4Runner, just even to this day, baffle me, what we went through with that vehicle, because you did everything almost mechanically. You did all your alignment mechanically and some of your tuning. I mean, obviously there was a fair amount of electronics, but back when, Mark was building that original 4Runner, there wasn't time alignment. There wasn't things like that. So you had to do that mechanically. So it took a very crafty person, and Mark, being the mechanical engineer that he is, I mean, came up with some really amazing things, and it's still things in that vehicle I'm just like, wow. So, well, why don't you tell us, because I know people are going to be asking, we referenced it a couple times. You got this big blue behemoth behind you, which probably a lot of these people have never heard of, and I will tell you, that's the first time I've probably seen that in 30 years. It's just in the picture there. Tell us what you got back there and how this really helped you to where you're at now, and how important it is to the industry.
Well, this is the Terminator. That's what I call it. It's a 1960 Cadillac hearse. I built this car in 1985. It has a lot of things in it that were so far ahead of its time that, you like, for instance, it has a rear view camera. It has an onboard Apple II Plus computer that controls everything. It has a glass cockpit, so homemade instrumentation with tachometer, digital speedometer. I was inspired by that movie, The Spy Who Loved Me, with James Bond. So they had a Lotus on there, and it turned into a submarine. And so I was inspired by that. But this car, I built it in 1985. I won a championship in Dallas. At that show, that's when Orion offered me a job. And then I had that car. I've had it ever since. It hasn't changed much. The last time the vehicle was changed was in 1991. So I put in when it has the 6 original Power 1000C prototypes. So I built those amps for myself for this vehicle, and then the marketing director, one of the marketing directors at Rockford, wanted it to be a real product, and they took it from there. But I don't want to spill the beans too much on the car. Here's where we're at. The car has been sitting in mothballs inside in an airplane hangar, covered for decades. And you know how, so nothing has changed. It's a time capsule. It even has the Madonna, it has a VCR on board. So it has video displays. This is in 1985. This is back when a VCR, if you wanted a portable VCR or a camcorder, it was a camera with a side pack that you carried around.
And they were $3,000 back then.
Yeah. And so, you know, the car, it's been sitting for a long time. When I went to the MasterTech show a couple of years ago, Mark Fukuda had brought back the Blastro van from the 90s, and it had been fully restored. And I'm like, okay, dude, I'm in. I'm all in.
Game is on.
Do this. Yeah. And so when I got back, if you let a car sit for a long time, you know, the rubber, anything that touches fluids or rubber or anything starts to deteriorate. So I contacted Austin Speed Shop. That's Jesse James' old shop here in Austin, and they specialize in these types of custom type installs. And so I took it over there, and they had it for like 6 months. I told them to replace anything with rubber, hoses, belts, fluids, everything, brakes, shocks, gas tank. Don't touch the electronics. And then what do? They replaced the fuel pump, and it was too big, so they took off one of my alternators. So that was I'm like, dude, what are you thinking?
Without even asking?
Yeah, without even asking. So I got the car back, and I started doing some videos on it. But there were some challenges. You know, my wife has been going through some medical treatments for breast cancer, so she's doing great. But
I was going to ask.
Yeah, so she's amazing. She's a superstar.
Give Celeste my best.
Thanks. Yeah, she's probably watching this. She'd probably kick my butt for saying that. But so really nothing has happened on the car in the last year. In my spare time, I've been working on this hangar that we bought, and it's like NASA here. So moving forward, starting in the next few months, I'm going to get back on the car. My goal is to have it the same way, fully operational, keep it as original as it was to 1985. So the original equipment, the Apple II computer, some of the subwoofers, I'm sure it has 3 24-inch subs.
I was about ready to ask you about those, because that was the one thing I remembered more than anything about that car, with those 3 24-inch woofers.
Well, you know, in the very first iteration of the Terminator, I had a 30-inch EV sub.
Yep, so I remember that sub.
It was like Back to the Future, literally. That sub only handles 75 watts, and I was listening to Hot for Teacher from Van Halen. It's got that motorcycle, that at the beginning, and I literally had cone separation where the voice coil broke through the cone, and so I'm like, okay, that sub, it could produce low frequencies, but it just couldn't handle the power.
Yeah, it was designed to play really, really loud. I mean, and didn't have a long throw to those either. And I remember when Clarion had their Thunderdome woofer, another 30-inch. So
you know, I've got there's some old school videos on my YouTube channel, DBTV. there's a really good one from the World of Wheels event that pretty much shows the car the last time it was fully operational in a public setting, and that's how it's going to look when I'm done with it. So
I highly recommend everyone watching look that video up on his site. I mean, that was a neat car. That's one of the things that'll always stand out in my mind. But 24-inch woofers, I mean, they weren't exactly designed for car audio. Obviously, we've said that a few times. But going back to the competitions and the efficiency thing, we were talking earlier, about the efficiency of speakers and efficiency in amplifiers, that they're more efficient, they're smaller and take less electricity. But speakers is actually the name of the game in the Enclosure. If you're talking efficiency and sensitivity. So just give a little insight to that for the guys that are just thinking that just wattage all the time, more.
That's exactly right. And so nothing will have a bigger impact on the efficiency of a system than subwoofer selection. And then, of course, the enclosure design. So when you look at an amplifier, and even a class AB amp, and maybe it's 50% efficient, and then there's you have all these different classes of amps now that are becoming more and more efficient. Even if it was twice as efficient, even if it was 100% efficient, that's only a 3 dB gain in effective output for the amount of input power, only 3 dB. So when you double the power, it's 3 dB. When you cut the power in half, it's 3 dB. Okay, so 3 dB is something that's barely perceptible to our hearing. And I'm sure your viewers here know these things. If you want to make something sound twice as loud, it takes 10 dB. And 10 dB just so happens to be almost exactly 10 times the amount of power. So if you play something at 1 watt and you want to make it sound twice as loud, you have to provide 10 watts of power. So you can start doing the math, and I did some right before the show, but let me explain why we've gotten to where we're at. In the old days, in the preliminary days, back in the beginnings, if you have archaeological...
Early on in car audio.
Yeah, early on in car audio, power was expensive. Like I said, that 1,000-watt amp from Rockford was $2,600. And it wasn't a single channel. That was 4-channel amplifier, 250 watts per channel, $2,600. Expensive. So you had to use speakers that were really efficient, and that's called sensitivity. So the speakers I was using originally in the Regal, and that car was called Eruption, by the way, after Van Halen's song Eruption. These EV subs, they had a sensitivity of 101 dB at 1 watt at 1 meter.
And that was just the driver, not in the enclosure, correct?
Yeah, that's just the driver. So it handled 400 watts, which is not a lot of power. Had edge wound copper windings. It was a low compliance sub, so it has like the surround that looks like an accordion. It was designed for a vented enclosure, so it needed a large vented enclosure, like 4 cubic feet per sub. But it's 101 dB at 1 meter. So today, a lot of these subs are in the low to mid 80s. We're talking almost 15 to 20 dB less sensitive. So to produce the same amount of sound pressure level, you have to apply, in one of my calculations, 23 times more power to get the same equivalent sound pressure level as that EV sub at 400 watts. So it's a huge difference. So you have to ask yourself, why did things change? And this is my opinion, my belief is, the one thing we know is cars have limited real estate. That means that there's only so much space you have to put a subwoofer. And if you want to produce low bass and you have a small box, it requires a sub that has high compliance, a big surround, a lot of excursion. When you build a sub like that, a lot of times it's less efficient. And so then it requires more power. And the more power you apply to make that sub handle that additional power, the voice coil gets beefier, heavier. And so it takes more energy to move the whole mass of the motor. So you get in this positive feedback loop. To handle more power, it takes more weight, and to make the speaker play louder, it takes more power, which requires more weight. You get stuck in that. So you have these companies that are making subs that are designed for small enclosures, primarily small sealed enclosures, because that would fit in the car. And at the same time, the cost of power was going down. Of course, that also required upgrades to the electrical system in the vehicle. So now, when you go from 1,000 watts to 10,000 watts, it's not just the cost of the sub or the amplifier. You now have to deliver the energy. So you have to have everything in the electrical system has to be able to produce that. And so a lot of the costs, that's why you had stiffening caps, you had additional batteries. Now we have lithium batteries. I don't know how many people are doing the high output alternators anymore. Lithium batteries kind of changed that equation a lot. So because they can deliver so much energy for such a long period of time, and then you can charge them at your leisure. But the other part of the equation that's really, really critical is the subwoofer enclosure. And when I do seminars on sub box design, I tell people you need to look at your palette of enclosures the same way an artist looks at colors. So depending on what you want to paint, you select the correct colors to get the job done. Excuse me. So if you have a sub box program for doing subwoofer enclosure design, and just, in all honesty, I sell one. I'm not here to promote
just
that.
Tell them what it is. They probably know anyway.
Yeah. So I do Term Pro enclosure design software. I know a lot of the users probably already use it. If you do a design, for instance, a seal box design, and then you design a vented box with similar enclosure volume characteristics, there's a massive amount of additional bass that you get when you compare those two plots. So it's, with a ported box, you can extend that low frequency roll off by using a vent. And so the system, whether you want to think of it as more efficient, it definitely gives you more bass in the areas where you really need it. And also remember this, in a vented box, you have minimal cone movement at the tuning frequency of the enclosure. So when you design your box, if you design your box properly and you select where you want that bass note to really hammer, you can make it such that the cone itself is barely moving. So that increases the reliability of the system. So now you've got a system that's more efficient, and it is more reliable mechanically, and you don't have to use so much power, so it saves you money. And there's just a lot of benefits to that. So the thing about this is these are concepts that you would consider for a normal car stereo system that you drive around and listen to. In the competition world, like in DB drag racing, that's a whole nother planet of serious competition. We have some vehicles that are doing over 185 dB. That is such a staggering number, I can't even begin to tell you. And to get because of the logarithmic nature of sound pressure level, attaining an additional tenth of a dB can require thousands of watts, tens of thousands of watts of power.
Hundreds of hours of work.
And just like a top fuel dragster is designed specifically for one purpose, which is to go down the strip as fast as possible in a quarter of a second. Some of the vehicles that are these mind-blowing DB drag cars, that's what they're designed for. And so in those cases, you have to have the subs that can handle the power. You have to have the amps that can deliver the power. And those systems have, 100,000 watts of power or maybe more. So I guess the takeaway from me is, if you're smart and you really think it through and you're careful with the selection of the subwoofer you want to use, and you begin with the end in mind. What are you trying to achieve? What kind of music do you listen to? How loud do you listen to that music? How much space am I going to allocate for the subwoofer enclosure? And, do I want to beef up the electrical system? And how much money do I want to spend? You start asking yourself those questions, or at least have a consultation with your customer and ask them those questions. Then you'll start getting a clarity of thought. Then you can go in and start comparing subwoofers and looking at those sensitivity ratings. And the higher the sensitivity is a number given, it'll be like, 88 dB at 1 watt, 1 meter, or something to that effect. So that's the number you look at. You can choose one that the higher the number, the better, assuming it's not fudged, which we've seen a few times.
Oh, we've seen it in wattage. We've seen it in power handling, output of amplifiers. But you touched on a lot. You start talking about some of these numbers out there that they do basically make up, brown numbers as we call them. And unfortunately, that's part of life. But doing a little bit of research, I think you guys can read through that. And I know one of the companies, I won't say who they are, they're no longer in car audio, but you've got to watch the way they measure things. You can make anything look any way you want on paper, but how does it really sound and perform is the key. Because this company was rating their speakers at 1 watt, half a meter. So obviously they were louder, had a higher sensitivity rating, but they really weren't. It was just the way they were measured. So make sure
sorry to interrupt, but I've also seen them rated at like 2.83 volts. Okay,
yes.
There's we really keep an eye on that, and I've called out some of these companies before because in the Term Pro program, we really want to make sure that the driver parameters that we include with the software are as accurate and valid as possible. Because if the data is bogus and someone spends the time, energy, and money to design a sub box, and then the results of the system are terrible, they usually blame the program. But that's not really what the problem is. The problem is you garbage in, garbage out. And so we try hard to make sure that this stuff is valid.
Well, real quickly, just because I'm sure that people are going to be asking, with a high sensitivity versus a low sensitivity woofer, what are you giving up on either side of that fence? I mean, because some people are like, well, hey, if it's higher sensitivity means it's going to play louder, don't I always want the most high sensitive woofer that I can find? So what would be some of the disadvantages of the high sensitivity?
First of all, the high sensitivity drivers almost always don't handle as much power. They, by their very nature, the motor structure is lightweight, and the heavier something is, the harder it is to move. And especially, it's amazing loudspeaker technology. I can't even believe that we're using the same basic concepts that has been around for a century now. Really, using electromagnetic field to move a cone back and forth to displace air. But the heavier the motor, the less efficient. The other thing is the surround and the spider. So a lot of times the subs that have the high compliance surround, the foam rubber, with the big excursion, again, by their very nature, they're going to be less efficient. And the cone itself is more, in order to handle the additional power, the cone itself has to be stronger so that it doesn't flex. And so that all of these things add weight. So that affects the efficiency of the driver. But they also have a place. If you want to use a lot of power, and power, like I said, is getting cheap, if you throw enough power at something, you can pretty much overcome any design mistake. Even in a sub box, you can design the box poorly, and if you put on enough power, the thing will probably still hammer, because you're just beating the heck out of it. There's, again, you have to look at what you're trying to achieve. I've always wished that, I think it would be really cool if like in one of our formats, DB Drag Racing, for instance, we offered a kit, just like a Pinewood Derby in Cub Scouts, where everybody gets the same kit. And so imagine we give everybody the same sub and the same amplifier, and then the competition becomes about the installation, the efficiency, the enclosure design, speaker placement, things of that nature. So everybody starts with the same, and then the competition becomes about skill and knowledge and technology. Yeah, that's right.
See, I'd love that. That would be really exciting. And then the other nice thing about that coin is it's at a set cost level. I mean, other than the vehicle and, any dressing up, but, you're not limited to these people that are throwing, $200,000 at their SPL vehicle versus the guy in the backyard, using a skill saw and, drywall screws to put his enclosure together and trying to compete. I think that would be a lot of fun, actually.
It would. And, the other thing that'd be cool about it is it would be inexpensive, so it would give somebody a taste of getting involved. And, I'll be serious. I'll be honest with you. The competition is only a small element of this whole car stereo thing. There's a camaraderie. When you get people together that have a common interest or a common love for a specific type of thing, people tend to make friends because you have a common interest. And so there's a social element. I call it the Goldilocks Zone. You see people just enough, but not too much. And so, see them at events from time to time. And it's just enough so that, you get to pick up where you left off. And so, I mean, it's our goal originally, DB Drag Racing, for instance, the goal was our charter is to stimulate interest and participation in car audio, aftermarket car audio, and car audio competition. So that's what we do.
And you do it well. It's always been a lot of fun watching your events.
I have a good team. I don't do it so much anymore, but the people that we have doing our events and our judges, they're top tier.
Well, and I think if people take a lot away from this, I mean, what you're learning is that, the really good systems have all areas. They're electrical, they're mechanical, they're, the music, the skill involved, and, the research, and same thing with running a business like DB Drag. You get the right people underneath you that all focus on their parts. Everything works great. And how many years have you been doing DB Drag? Let's put you on a spot for a number there, because I can't even remember when you started.
The first DB Drag Racing event was in 1994, and we just completed, I don't know if it's like the 30th or 31st, a long time, 3 decades. I still remember some of the events, and we'll probably get to this, but I'm going to just kind of cut ahead of you. So
go right ahead.
We haven't talked about making measurements in cars and how that has changed. So in the old days, in the early days of car audio, the George Reed days, we would use microphones we'd use like meters made by C-Tech Ivy, B&K, audio control, and they all used a microphone that had a diaphragm on it, like a little drum head, and that would convert the sound waves into electrical energy, and then the meter would read that. The problem, and this is a problem, huge problem, is microphones are not intended to measure those extremely loud sound pressure levels. And when you have competition where you're measuring cars to tenths, or in our case of bass race, one of our formats, hundredths of a dB, where you have 2 cars competing simultaneously, you can't have somebody win or lose because the meter, this lane is louder than this lane. And what happened, and this happened in 2001, 2002, we did our finals, and I had a piston phone calibrator, and we were using stick style mics. But by that time, the cars had gotten so loud that when a car would go through the lanes and we'd measure it with the microphone, I'd put the mic right back on the calibrator and it would be off by 10 dB. Okay. And then it would recover over a period of minutes, but it would never be back to what it was. So we were losing confidence, and it was causing a lot of drama. We used to have lane choice where the competitors could guess which lane was reading louder than the other. But in 2001, I literally almost felt like I was going to have a heart attack. The stress was so great. I could not deliver. We just could not get consistent, what I would call consistent, accurate, reliable results. So after that, I went to the drawing board. I started all over, reimagined how we measure sound. And I developed the sensor technology that we use today. And that came out in 2003 at CES. It got a Design and Engineering Innovation Award, actually. So I was really proud of that. But that was a game changer, because now we had the ability to measure these systems up to over 180 dB. The current systems measure 100 up to 193. But all of them read the same. They never require calibration. They're impervious to physical abuse. And so now you can go anywhere in the world and make your measurements, and you know that the equipment is going to be correct. And there's other companies trying to copy our technology, but there's nothing. Again, I make sound measurement equipment. TermLab is actually used by all of the sound off organizations, not just DB Drag. There must be 100 sound off orgs now, and they all use TermLab because it delivers accurate, repeatable results. That was a game changer, because now people could enter the competition and know that they're winning or losing, or they could test their vehicle, and if their score went up or down, it wasn't because of the meter, it was because of something in their system. So they could put in a new amp, they could try a new sub, they could change a tuning frequency, they could move the speaker around. Whatever it was they were doing, they would know that if they did those changes and then they took the measurement, they could look in their logbook and see if it was something that helped them or not.
Yeah, and that test equipment being accurate, I mean, with any industry is so important, you know, and not to get into some of the real crazy tools out there, but and completely off subject, but I remember, you know, when I was in machine tool, gauge blocks, you know, that they used to, you know, basically test micrometers. You could actually twist those together, and they were so polished, so perfect, they would actually stick together from suction because the air molecules couldn't get out from between them. So but it's always good to have really, really good test equipment, and it's really great when we got someone like you on our side that's helping develop this, because I remember that was always, you know, everybody's always wondering how accurate, you know, you always had the differences in the brands and the meters and, you know, the time of day but, you know, knowing that, you know, you've got a system that's that accurate, I mean, obviously helps you sleep better at night. It just makes the whole industry more truly competitive in an actual, you know, level playing field versus, you know, I remember one of the events that I went to, one of the guys was bumped up in classes, and this was, you know, before 90 even, and he got bumped up to another class that he wasn't even registered in because they needed more competitors, and he actually won that class. But what was amazing was he came back with 4 of the 5 judges went to lunch with him before that whole competition. So having good test equipment can rule out, you know, favoritism and stuff like that.
Well, you know, it's super critical, especially right now in DB drag racing. We are now doing multi-venue competitions. So we have one huge event, like our finals this year, but we have multiple locations. And so the meters are all connected to the internet. And so the competitors may be competing against the guy sitting right next to him, or they may be competing against someone in Europe or someone in California or Canada or wherever it is. And
that's cool.
The only way that will work is if the competitors have confidence that the numbers are the same. This is another thing I just thought of that has been a real game changer in the sound off community. And that's the ability to measure actual real-time true power out of the system during the competition. Because what was happening is you'd have a class and somebody would come in with a huge amp and they would clean up. Well, now most of the sound off orgs have adopted some classes that are power limited. So let's say you have a 1,000-watt power class. It doesn't matter what your amp is. As long as you don't go over 1,000 watts during that competition, then it's a fair game. So that really, when we look at the number of people entering the competition, you no longer have to have these huge amps to be competitive. You can now spend just enough to stay in that 1,000-watt category, for instance.
Well, that is awesome. And you know what? You were worried about boring people, Wayne. We've been going on for quite a while here, almost an hour. Let's take a break and see if we got anybody that's got any questions for Wayne. I'm sure that they've got several of them flagged. Brian Park says, Why we had home speaker cabinets in the cars, ha ha ha, because that's all that was available back then, right?
Yeah, in my car in Eruption, I didn't have the home speakers, but I did have home. I had like home receivers because I didn't have enough money. You couldn't buy the amps. I couldn't put 2 or 3 Power 650, so I was using like home receivers.
And how did you power that?
I had an onboard inverter system that would convert the 12 volts into 1,000. It was a 1,000-watt inverter, and it produced like 50,000 watts of hum in my system.
Like the old FM antenna boosters. I think they just amplified all the static that you got. We'd sell 10 of them and 20 of them would come back. It was really weird. So what other good questions we got for Wayne? We're almost going to have to think about doing a second show because we just barely touched the tip of the iceberg of things we wanted to cover tonight. That's usually the way it works with me. So Jason, WW2000 says, Wayne, are you still using a portable camera? Would it be cool to take a peek at the car interior? Or it would be cool.
Thanks, Jason. That's not possible tonight. I don't have a portable camera here. I would just suggest that you please watch my YouTube channel. In fact, here's the thing, guys. I have videos, hundreds of hours, 1,000 hours, maybe more, a video that go all the way back to 84, all throughout my career, like at IASCA events. And I would be willing to, I've put some on my YouTube channel at DBTV. If you just go to DBTV.com, it links you. If you guys will just subscribe so I know there's interest, I'll put forth the effort to edit and upload those videos because it's intensive effort to do that. So
I think you were talking before about the copyright with the music, and because we didn't have that back then. We didn't have YouTube that could hear that and censor it.
That just kills me. I mean, we did our finals last year or the year before. I was live streaming and I didn't break it up. So it was a recording and it was like 12 hours long. And right at the end, after it was over, somebody was playing demo music and it flagged my whole video as an infringement. And I couldn't edit it out because the video was too long. And so it was a long ordeal. You can actually fight this with YouTube, but it's a long ordeal. So yeah, it's bogus. I just need, we do car audio and people are playing their stereos. I mean, I got flagged because a guy was playing a radio station and it was like KKRX, and
WKRP.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, Jason, if you'll just watch the YouTube channel, I've got some videos on the Terminator on there, and I'm really motivated to get this project finished up, and you're going to see a lot more live streams and recordings in the future.
Well, definitely looking forward to it. I know you're going to get at least one new member because I'm signing up for it before the night's over. So, Sam Law asks, Rolling Thunder that used to be in Vegas or the one in NE? So, no, the Rolling Thunder was actually Jimmy's store in Vegas. Actually, one of my good buddies now. But NE, are you talking about Nebraska? I think you were in Texas, though, weren't you? Ernie says Thunder on Wheels.
Doc Thunder. Rolling Thunder, that was a competition. That was what George Reed, he's like the granddaddy of car audio competition. He was the man. He's the one that really started car audio competition. As far as I know, I think he is the person that did it. He was a rep for Rockford Fosgate. That was here in Texas. Now, maybe, I wouldn't be surprised if there's numerous dealers named Rolling Thunder. I mean, that's a great catchy name. And if you're building systems with boom cars and stuff like that, that's a good name. But I'm not familiar of anything in Vegas, or maybe that's NE is New England. I don't know.
That is possible. And Marcus Nance says, what was a proper brand to use in competitions then? I think you've said several of them.
Yeah, there was a couple. Rockford Fosgate, Orion, Linear Power, and Zapco come to mind for amplifiers. There were not really many subwoofer companies. One of the beginning, like I said at the beginning, even as early as 84, 85, Kicker was making sub boxes, and another company called M&M came out with some poly subs. And the thing about those, man, that half the time the tinsel leads would get so hot that it would melt the polypropylene, and so then you'd have a failure in the sub. But for CDs, there was the only CD player at the time was the Sony. And then, of course, Alpine was an early adopter in the car audio scene. Man, I had some Alpine equipment. I had an Alpine cassette changer and an Alpine CD changer, and they had those green chiclet buttons. I forget what models were. And I got rid of that stuff, and could kill myself for that. That was just really cool. Concord made a source unit, Concord HP 550. Man, dude, I'm pulling stuff. I have no idea if that's what it was really called.
Now, if I remember at those Concord cassette decks, the cassette went in the long way.
Yes, that's right.
I had one.
And then of course, Lloyd Ivy, MTX. And MTX was one of my sponsors in 1985 and 86. I exhibited at the Consumer Electronics Show in 1986. There was no car audio pavilion. The North Hall, the South Hall didn't exist. We were in a parking lot outside. But MTX was one of my very first sponsors. And if you look at pictures of the Terminator from the day, you'll see MTX logos on it. If you look at MTX today, they have, over the years, it comes and goes, but they have a series of products called Terminator, and it uses my logo, actually, the logo that I have on my car. So I didn't derive any revenue, unfortunately, but I do want to say, Lloyd Ivy was a mentor for me, and he was a leader in the industry for a long time. And now his son runs, his son John runs the company. And you guys too. I mean, there are people at Kicker like Kevin, who just retired. Kevin was instrumental in getting me hired at Rockford, actually. So
Kevin's good, people.
He is.
Too funny. Well, not another question from Brian Parks. What's the limit or max dB you think we can reach in a vehicle? Great question. I was kind of thinking the same thing myself.
I would say that we're almost at that limit. You reach a point where here's what it comes down to. Sound wave is compression and rarefaction. So you create pressure and then you create vacuum. But you can have pretty much infinite pressure, like in a thermonuclear explosion, but you can't go less than a vacuum. A vacuum is absolutely, you can't have a negative pressure. So we have 14.7 psi. That's our static atmospheric pressure average. So we have plus 14.7 and minus 14.7, and you can't go beyond that. On the nose, what you'll end up with is a distorted waveform. 193 dB, which is what TermLab measures, that unit uses a pressure sensor that's good from 0 to 30 psi. And so I don't believe you're not going to be able to get, and it's just you reach this point of diminishing returns. So, but let's just be real. When I built the Terminator in 1985, there was a piece of plywood, and I had it sitting, it was in the shop, and I spray painted 160 on there because that was unobtainium. 160 dB was something that was like, if you say, I'm going to build a car that can do 1,000 dB, it was that out there, 160. Now, people do 160 dB, they don't even bat an eye. I see guys doing bass race at 160 dB. Or, really, it's like not such a challenge because the technology and the knowledge has evolved. So
and the cost has come down on the gear quite a bit too.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
Allows more people to do this. So very cool. I've got about 12 minutes to 9 right now. So I suppose we better give you a break, Wayne, and I guess I'm going to have to invite you back again because you've got so much information. I knew it'd be impossible to get even a fraction of it out on the show tonight, but I do want to thank you for your time and appreciate you dropping in on us and everything you've given to this industry over the years that, continue all of us to do what we love and make a living doing it. Like Ernie says, sure a lot better than putting on shingles or shoveling concrete.
Let's bring Wayne back on.
Definitely don't want to have to get a real job, but keep us posted on the Terminator. And will we see you at SEMA?
Negative. This year I've been on complete hiatus. We got, these things change your priorities. Yeah, we have priorities. My goal is to get Solis fully functional, 100%, and everything we do is for that. So I'm not going to be attending any shows. I didn't even go to our finals this year. This is the first time in 30 years I have not been there, but we just couldn't do it. So
family's definitely more important.
Yeah, starting next year, I'll be everywhere. You won't believe it. I'll be a pest for sure.
No,
Revenge.
Never a pest.
Revenge.
Never a pest.
When he does the Terminator, when he gets it done, let's get him back on.
Yeah, Ernie says he want to get you back on when you get the Terminator done. You got a rough approximation, months, years? What is your goal? Let's just say that.
I want to have it running by March. So let's hope that.
Oh, real quick.
We have. I'll tell you the stupid, and then I'll get out of your hair. I can't blame all of this on Solis, because it's not her fault. My car, the Terminator, has a rotating amp rack in the back. It's way bitchin' cool. And inside the car is where all of the batteries are located. So when I built the car, I would lay the amp rack down horizontally, and then I get on my back and scooch under there. Okay. The problem was, since I built the car, I put on some extra kilos and I couldn't fit underneath there. So that was one of the motivators for me to really get physically active. And
you've done great with that.
Thanks. I can fit again. So, but that was a year-long delay right there. I mean, you can't have a car with no power. And I couldn't get to the place where the batteries. Yeah.
Too funny. So,
yeah.
All right. I know Steven's scribbling on the board back here about something. So.
I'm going to bring it up May 17th. See if you can bring it up for
Oh, they're asking. We've got an event. We're going to be doing an SQ event here at the plant May 17th. So put that on your calendar, Wayne. And the rest of you guys out there as well, we'll be doing an SQ event right here at the KICKER National Headquarters on May 17th. Keep watching our websites for details, but it's going to be open to anybody and everybody. And I think we've, from the interest we've had, we're going to have a really, really cool turnout. A lot of names you'll know in this industry. So I would welcome you as well, Wayne, if you can make it out in May, if all things work out. And if you can get that thing done, drag it on out here.
Yeah, I want to be able to drive it. And by the way, guys, the KICKER facility is amazing. And I'm not easily impressed. But when I went up there a few years ago and did one of these, I mean, they really have amazing facility there and a great studio. And they have all these beautiful displays up front. Plus, there's a room, a museum, actually. Do you guys still have that museum that has all the cool stuff?
Oh, yeah. That's Irby's little private museum of the kind of the history of KICKER. And we've got actually one of the first car radios ever built. There's a good trivia question for you, Wayne. What year was the first car radio, aftermarket car radio built?
Man, you got me there.
I only know
Besides,
this
if I answer that, I would really date myself. Was it a Motorola?
Well, yeah,
Muntz.
Muntz, yep, Ed Muntz, 1926. So,
hey, I got the name, but I couldn't
yes, you
think
did.
of the product. Yeah.
But we've actually got a 1930 version of that in our museum, but we've got, all the history of, you get it in the museum up here, you'll be able to see some, one-off prototypes, products that we never, brought to market for one reason or another. The slow evolution of products, how it morphed, the different looks. And there's just a bunch of really cool stuff here. We got cool cars in the museum. We've got just really, it is an absolutely incredible facility. And, you know, every time I drive to work and see it, it's like, wow, I get to work there. Well, sometimes my job's, most of it's on the road, but occasionally I get to come back to the office and enjoy it. So,
are you going to have it open? Are people going to be able to, are you going to do any tours?
I would assume so. I think it's so far down the line, we haven't even determined all that yet, but I'm sure they'll probably make it a way that people can come into the facility and see it. But if you can get up here, anybody, if you can get up here, I mean, anytime during the week, 8 to 5 during the week, I mean, you've got a great museum you can come look at and come see the visitor center, and we'd love to have you. It's, you know, sharing the knowledge and the excitement.
Cool. Thanks for the invitation.
Yep. Well, and thank you again, Wayne, for getting on tonight. And as always, give Sleece my best. I'm sorry I won't see you at SEMA, but I'm sure I'll catch up to you very soon, early next year, because it's getting really close already. It's amazing how quickly this year went by, and ready to start another one.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Wayne. And everybody, if you had more questions for Wayne, just go ahead and send them in to Ernie real quick. We can forward those on to him, I do believe. And hopefully not tie him up too much, but that guy's just got so much information. So thank you. Go take care of the wife, and we will have you on again soon. Hopefully we'll have you out here in May with your car. So there's your goal.
All right.
Cool. All righty, Ernie. Well, let's move on. I know you guys are getting really itchy to see who's going to win that $2,500 contest, but you're going to have to wait, because you know how I've got stuff that I have fun doing. And we're going to start off tonight with letting you know the only event we really have coming up is SEMA. That's going to be, I think, November 3rd through the 6th, I think it is. Anyway, I'm going to be up there far longer than that. But SEMA's a really neat, you know, automotive collection, but it's all for industry people. It's very little consumer. I think the last day, I think they do let consumers in, but that's kind of the next place we'll be going. But let's go back to our fun little list of things. Let's look at some cool installs. And if Ernie wants to pull up my laptop, I'm going to zoom in on this picture a little bit so we can see it a little bit better. This is kind of a neat install, and this is not from the U.S. I really couldn't even begin to tell you, you know, I think the writing, I'm not sure if it was Asian or Arabic or anyway, but whoever did this car, really, really nice job. I mean, it's just, here again, it's creativity, putting different materials together and just doing something different. You know, the box is actually suspended and floating, and clear plastic front, the whole inside's finished. So that is absolutely a gorgeous install. Here's another one I really like. Of course, it's got the now famous Solo X woofer in there. This is in the back of a side-by-side with a couple of our cans up top. I imagine this thing rocks. If you look right here, that little block standing on top, that's actually the port, and it's directing the port over the bed and into the listening area, and I bet that thing absolutely rocks, especially if you're in the back seat sitting next to it. That woofer is just amazing, the output you can get out of that. And if you guys didn't know, if you go back and watch some of the older videos, you know, Wayne was talking about, you know, maximum SPL. And you got to do the old kicker plug. Solo X15 single woofer doing 180.24 dB with 19,600 watts of power 6 times. So Carlos did that test on that thing. 180.24 with one 15-inch woofer. So this is another really neat install. And of course, you see the Comp Q woofer in there. Those are the only speakers of ours that are in this vehicle, but that's okay. This is just all about installs that I think are cool. They don't necessarily all have to have our gear. But if you notice the design and detail, all the plexi and all the color and the LED work, if you look inside, it's got just some really neat paint effects inside, and just really top craftsmanship putting this vehicle together. And I imagine it's very loud. And wait till you see the doors on this vehicle. Yeah, the doors are all acrylic and lit up. I mean, the enclosure. So that was a ton of work, but how cool is that? I've always been partial to lights and lighting things up, so to see something like this is actually pretty darn cool. So keep those pictures coming. Send your pictures in to Kicker Club. Send them in to our social media. And I think, Colin, if you put up our social media site for guys to send you pictures that you might want to post on Instagram, go ahead and put that call tag up there, because I haven't done it. I can't remember it. So that's against me on that one. So we've done those. We got to have some fun fails. So I'm going to go ahead and Ernie drag this screen back up here in a second. All right.
Not a fail.
Well, It is, but it isn't. It's not a fail because it probably works. It is a fail because you're not using the proper equipment. But yeah, if it works, it works. And you know, that's just really interesting with the solid copper wire. I mean, it's almost more art than anything. I think someone did this more as a challenge than to be actually practical. And we'll show you a practical one here in just a minute. But that is kind of cool. But, you know, a simple RCA to 1/4-inch adapter would have taken care of all that. So this is one I don't think you can talk enough about. And I'm really going to zoom in on this. And yes, what you're seeing is what was sent. This is another one of those pictures where the longer you look at it, the worse it gets. I've yet to figure out, obviously these two screws are screwed into the side of the amplifier, and I'm not even sure where or why, but they're holding another screw, which I'm not even sure what that one's supposed to be doing, but that's the least of our worries. Notice the power wire has got, looks like house wire, twisted together and stripped back 2 runs. Same thing if you look at the ground wire over here, and you know, obviously there's some water damage. But here's another interesting thing about this whole install. You know, that's showing you, here's the 2 bridge terminals, just like our amplifiers. The outer two connections are what you use to bridge those 2 channels together. And notice what wires they're using. They're using this one and this one, which these 2 terminals in most conventional amplifiers are common. So that's essentially only using half the power of that amplifier because they're only really connected to 1 rail. So yeah, it just continues to go downhill from there with that video or that picture. And then as I mentioned before, you know, it's not a fail if it works, but you know, really? Someone is testing their soldering skills at this point, but hey, if it works, I guess it works. But I think I probably would have cut the wires back and stripped them and removed the 2 plugs. But hey, you know, wire ties go a long way. And last but not least, you know, and yes, we've had products like this sent back to us before. Yeah, that is definitely a bullet wound in an amplifier. It may not have affected the performance on the amplifier because it didn't go through unless there were, you know, the output devices were mounted right on the back side and it flexed the metal. But we have had products shipped back to us with bullet holes in the baskets and the cones and the heat sinks. And no, that is not covered under warranty. So if we call you and tell you that, don't be surprised, or better yet, just don't send that stuff in because it's going to get rejected. So I guess it's up to me to read off all the winners tonight. Actually, we're going to have 4 winners tonight. So I'm going to rely on Colin to pop the 3rd place winner up on the screen. That's going to get the EB400s, the KICKER koozie, and the KICKER Unmasked t-shirt. The 4th prize winner today is Colin, Bud C from California. So Bud C from California, watch for an email from us. They're going to ask for your name, your phone number, your shirt size, and your actual shipping address, not a P.O. box, so we can get those goodies out to you. And I know I've talked to a lot of people that have won things several times on here, so if you didn't win this time, tune in 2 weeks or 2 weeks after that. Just keep tuning in. Odds are we'll probably get around to you at some point in time. But congratulations, Bud C from California. The 2nd prize winner of tonight is going to be Kyle G from Oklahoma. Well, Kyle, you have no excuse not to come pick up your prizes yourself. Just call us and let us know you're going to do it. But come up, check out our wonderful facility here and meet a bunch of the people here. And if I'm here, if I'm not traveling at the time you happen to get up here, I'd love to take you on a tour of the building. So congratulations, Kyle from Oklahoma. I know Oklahoma is a big state, but it's still not too big. You can't drive it in one day. So hopefully you can make it up to see us. The grand prize or 2nd grand prize winner is going to be, just saw it for a second and it went away, I think. Come on, Colin, I don't read that quick. I'm slow. So, Sean M. from Washington. Congratulations, Sean. You are going to win the BF100 Bluetooth speaker, and I forgot to mention, Kyle's going to win the TWS2s, which are our true wireless earbuds. And of course, Sean is going to win the BF100, the little Bullfrog Bluetooth wireless speaker, a t-shirt, and a koozie. And that brings us down to the very last competition, which is our $2,500 contest winner. Basically giving you a gift card for $2,500 for anything you want to buy from Kicker, as long as it's not, 60 pairs of tweeters, as long as you're trying to put, at least some semblance of a system together. We want to make this, sound as good as possible. Not that you can turn around and sell a whole bunch of tweeters on eBay or wherever you want to put them. But grand prize winner tonight of the $2,500 contest, and you and I will be talking, because I'm going to help you pick out the system, make sure you get everything you need. Who is that going to be, Colin? That is going to be Brian M., BR1ANM75 from Ohio. Congratulations, Brian. That is awesome. You have won the $2,500 shopping spree, and I'm more than happy to lend my services on helping you pick out the right gear. But if you're pretty confident know what you want, hey, roll with it. So, guys, I appreciate everyone that entered the contest. I'm sorry that everyone couldn't win, but unfortunately, that's the way these things work. So just keep registering, keep tuning in, and check back in 2 weeks. We'll be doing this show again at 7:30 Central Time right here in Stillwater's wonderful Kicker Unmasked studio. I've got Steven still hanging out back there. He looks like he's a little tired and he's ready to go. He started listening to me ramble. So is probably Ernie and Colin. JW, I hope you had a good time with the kids. I spent last weekend at the drag races in Ennis, Texas with Cruise Pendragon, who we sponsor, and you talk about a great team. And hopefully next week or next time I'm on, I'll show you some pictures of the drag races. It was something to be had, and that is not volume. I mean, I have no idea how loud those cars are, but it's ridiculously loud, especially when you're standing 3 feet from them on the start line and they take off. But very cool. So this industry's got a lot of cool aspects, and that's just one little one. So guys, thanks again for tuning in. Tune in again in 2 weeks. Stay tuned for Living Loud with Andy. Thank you again for all of our supporters out there, Bobby and Ashy, and of course you've got Baba, all you guys. We couldn't do it without you, so thanks again for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you personally in these events or coming out to Oklahoma to see us. Take care, guys, and good night.